What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard.
What kind of ignorant shit is that?
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
You idiot, you fool!
Hey, dummy!
This is the Ignorance is Blessed podcast.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Hey idiots, welcome to Ignorance is Blessed, the podcast that attempts to overcome ignorance, mostly by asking ignorant questions. I'm your host, Jessica Michelle Singleton. I'm a comedian and I'm ignorant and I'm usually asking questions. Today I'm just posing some thoughts, sharing some information I've learned from the World Wide Web and other resources, aka people who have given me advice, etc., etc. Apologies if you can hear the washing machine and dishwasher in the background. I recorded a full hour episode about triggering, which is our topic, yesterday, and then it just disappeared from the SD card, which honestly was extremely triggering. If you're new to the episode, welcome. I meant podcast, but if you're new to this episode, congratulations. So is everybody else, because it's a new episode. If you're new to the podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review me on iTunes. Leave a cool review. I'll post you on my Instagram story. I love them. They make me feel good, but more importantly, they help with the algorithm. So this podcast pops up a little easier when people go searching, and more people can learn the answers to their ignorant questions about people of different walks of life or professions or, in this case, psychology. Shout out to my best idiots forever, Dustin, Jean, and Kathy from Patreon. I just got my custom subscription boxes. I'm so excited. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the top tier of my Patreon, well, the top tier is if you give me $15,000, I'll get a tattoo. Not 15,000, 60,000 of whatever you want, because it'll pay off my student loans. But my actual top tier that that one's obviously sort of a joke. But if anyone's listening and just has a fat stack of cash that they want to throw at my student loans, I'll get your face tattooed across my back or whatever you want. Anyway, the tier below that, my highest Best Idiots Forever tier, we're doing quarterly subscription boxes. So you get a cool survey once you join that I send you to kind of fill out what you like. And then I customize these boxes with one piece of merch and just other fun stuff that you like. Maybe merch of a band you like or snacks you like. Some self-care scented candles or essential oils. It's sort of a box of self-care / self-love. I did my best type of thing. So there's other levels. You can get postcards from me on the mail or in the mail. You can get free tickets to shows when I come to your city. You can gift those tickets to other people. So if you're interested in that, you want to support the podcast, which helps me continue to not sell out to products who want to pay me money to advertise garbage on this podcast, you can head over to patreon.com/ignoranceisblessed. All one word, no hashtag in there. And I am gearing up to send out the postcards on Monday because I just realized it's Friday and I am failing. But to be fair, this was the hour I was going to send postcards out. And instead, I'm re-recording this episode because the universe is conspiring against all podcasts because they're tired of them. I got shows coming up, jmscomedy.com for shows. You can do that /shows to get directly to the site. I'm all over LA. I always post those or try to. And then I'm doing a winter tour with former guest of the show, Buddy Hutton. He'll be opening for me in a bunch of cities: Raleigh, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Portland, Maine, which is fun. Never been there. They're all fun. I'm excited. So head over to the website, get your tickets, come say hi. Like, nothing is more exciting to me than when an audience member comes up and they're like, oh my God, I listened to your podcast. Because it just reiterates like, oh, okay, I'm not speaking into a void, because it can feel like that sometimes, even though I can see the numbers, which I don't like to look at because then I become obsessed with them. And I'm like, I have to have more and more and more. It has to keep growing like some sort of weird billionaire warlock. But yeah, come to a show. Make a drive. Maybe we'll figure out like one of the places we can do like an East Coast meetup. What, like New York City? What do you guys think? December 13th, the day after the New York City show. Maybe we can all gather in a New York City lunch establishment. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out. Grab some pie. Oh God, pie. I'm eating a bowl of leftover curry that my roommate made, and I know I should be eating more food like this, but mostly I'm begrudgingly just trying to keep it from going bad because he's out of town. Why did I take a bite of this? It was a bad idea. Hang on. Okay, let's get right into it. Triggering. Because I recorded a full hour yesterday, and I'm going to have to keep this one a little shorter because I'm on time constraints. But a lot of people have triggers. Probably most people have at least something that's a trigger. And it's overused on Twitter. I think we can all agree on that. Or not even just Twitter, the internet. People, I'm triggered. It's this like joke that people have made about millennials because they're so sensitive. And I'm sensitive. I'm a very sensitive soul. But I think we very much live in a culture where some people have seen an opportunity to make being offended their identity. And so they just latch on to being triggered. And I'm saying that like with all the sympathy in the world of people just wanting to find somewhere where they belong. But like there are people who just get on Twitter and search keywords so that they can try to cancel people. That's a real thing because they've responded to some of my tweets. And I'm like, you've never followed me. No one you know retweeted me into your timeline. You were looking for something that said the word rape. Which, sorry, I didn't give a trigger warning for the word rape. It's also like, I want to be very clear. Triggers are they're very real reactions. They may be like a false response, sort of an alarm going up that doesn't need to. You know, it can be like a word or a phrase or even a scent that is reminding you of something else. But your triggers are your body trying to warn you about something, and it's not anyone else's problem to deal with your triggers. If you find someone who loves you and is close to you and is willing to be an advocate to like help you, you know, avoid those triggers or be more prepared for when they come up, or if you love someone who has triggers and that's a thing you're trying to do, we're going to touch on that. Not to trigger anyone. But it's not, the world isn't supposed to walk on eggshells because you might be reminded of something. You need to learn how to address your triggers. You need to learn how to handle it when you feel like you're going to walk into something, or what to do when you feel fully triggered, which is why I decided to record this episode, because I kind of went from 0 to 100 a couple weeks ago. And with a thing that I wasn't expecting to trigger me, which is usually, that's a big thing, that it can often be worse, or they can happen because you're not prepared. You know, if you go into a situation knowing there's going to be some things that might be triggers of yours, you know, I'm going to watch a scary movie and I get triggered by, you know, or some type of, you know, dramatic Lifetime or suspense film where there might be like domestic violence or, you know, sexual assault. Being ready for that to be a thing can actually make a huge difference. So sometimes you get blindsided. And there are people who don't really have PTSD or huge triggers. You know, if you grew up and you didn't have a lot of trauma, maybe you don't have a ton of emotional triggers. So it can be confusing for those people. So, you know, when you see someone else react to something and you're not really sure what's happening, what to do. That was the case for me when I was in Joker and got really triggered very early into the movie. And my boyfriend, who is a sweet angel and just pretty happy, positive guy, hasn't had a lot of like, you know, hasn't had any like intense trauma in his life, was a little overwhelmed. I mean, I literally was like, oh great, now I'm his trauma because I had a panic attack, which by the way, piles on. Not, he didn't say anything like that. He'd never, I don't even think I was trauma for him. I think we've taken a deep breath and moved on and we've discussed this, but like the guilt you feel on top of the trigger, so bad. Just like, so you're like, oh, I feel crazy now because I'm panicking, and this person whose opinion of me I value is now seeing me panic over something that they don't understand why it would be a panicking thing. Which there's a lot of tips for helping people. You know, if you love someone who is triggered, and like what you could maybe do, but not making them feel guilty is a huge one. It's huge. Like not being judgmental. Don't be judgmental. That's a huge one. Other things you can do is for me like distraction or comfort, but a big thing that helps me is breath, and I think that's like the number one thing that psychologists recommend, is just coming back to reality, kind of trying to center yourself and just be aware of your body. Because when you get really triggered, it can feel like out of body. You can feel like your emotions are so overwhelming you can't control it. It just feels, it extremely overwhelming at times. So that's a big part of it, is trying to kind of like shift your emotional state. But the first thing they say is, according to an article by Psychology Today, some steps to manage your emotional triggering, accepting responsibility for your actions, realizing that you're being triggered and going, oh, I'm being triggered. Instead of the mindset of, you can easily shift this mindset. Well, not that easily, but you can become triggered, acknowledge it, and not be the victim in that scenario. You don't have to go, oh God, I'm triggered. The world is collapsing around me. Why does the world do this to me? But being able to go, okay, I'm being triggered, and like kind of giving yourself the power of realizing that, of being able to acknowledge, I'm triggered. I need to figure out how to maneuver this situation to get out of this intense emotion, to get out of, this big reaction. Like kind of trying to make it your choice. Like you cannot control being triggered. That's literally why it's called triggering, but you can learn to control how to react to it. And the biggest thing you can do is, the biggest first step is kind of trying to identify what, I guess that's not true. Let me look at what they say. Identifying it is a big part, but that can be like harder. The first thing you do once you go like, okay, I'm being triggered. One of my firewalls is going off. One of my alarms is going off in my body, whether it's all of a sudden you're breathing deeper, or, you're tensing up, or like just heavy emotional state. You go to either fear or anger or sad, like you jump. When you go to a sudden emotion from a state of calm or a completely different emotion, that's a good indication that you've been triggered. That's a very clear indication you've been triggered. So recognizing that, and just kind of, without judging yourself, without going, oh no, I'm panicking. Oh my God, you fucking idiot. Why are you sad or whatever? No judgment. Don't be like, if you feel like that it's like a panic sensation, don't add to that. Like, don't be afraid of the fact that you feel something that is not less than. That's not a good way to phrase that. And that's why people have panics over what we call negative emotions. That panicking over having an adverse emotion, so not one that you enjoy feeling, exacerbates it. If you can recognize that you're panicking, or that you're sad, or that you're angry, that is the first step to being able to sort of cull that emotion. So, going, oh my God, I'm feeling afraid. Okay, I'm feeling very overwhelmed. I feel angry, or, I feel suddenly very sad. Just being able to kind of put a title on it, going, wow, I feel disrespected. Kind of acknowledging what, I feel this is making me feel worthless, or that I'm being abandoned. That can help. Just acknowledging, yep, okay, that is what's going on, is a huge, it's important, because so often we try to bury stuff like that, and then when you get triggered and it goes off, it's like this dichotomy of, two things fighting against each other, where your body is like, fight or flight, we're mad, start panicking, and the rest of you is like, be calm, fucking don't be crazy, because if you're not calm, people think you're nuts. Acknowledging that you're having an emotion, first step, and then trying to identify what triggered it. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's like literally someone said something to you that made you feel unvalued, or that you weren't being treated fairly, or, that you were being sort of, I don't want to say trapped, but, controlled, like that you don't have your own freedom. That's a big trigger for some people, myself included. Made you feel crazy, whatever. It made you feel unloved. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you go, wow, that person said this and that really set me off. Sometimes there are bigger triggers. Like if you have like heavy trauma, sometimes you have stuff deep buried in that all of a sudden you go to a movie like Joker, or you're, eating green beans at a roadside steakhouse in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and you smell them and suddenly you start sobbing. Sometimes it takes a little digging deeper. Wow. I can't talk. Talking about triggers trips up my speech. So if you're able to like quickly identify, sometimes you almost have to tuck it away, I think, and just go, we can come back to that. Like, let's really dive into what's going on when I calm down. If it's something where you can't immediately identify, that would be my advice. And I'm obviously not a licensed therapist, because I didn't want to do the schooling. And I had other dreams, but that'd be my advice. If it's something that you don't immediately like, why am I reacting like this? Put aside the why. And that takes work. I think that's the same as, learning to identify your emotions and learning to recognize your breath or when you need to come back to your breath. Meditation helps with that. I've been really off the wagon with meditation. And I do think had I been meditating regularly when I got triggered recently, I would have been able to calm it a little quicker. So what you want to do, you recognize the emotion, you've been triggered. If you can't identify, or you can. If you can't identify what it is, put that to the side and then choose what you would like to feel. You can't just shift your emotion, but if you go, okay, I'm feeling angry and I want to be calm. Let me try to, you make that like the intention. You set that intention inside you. Like, also be aware. It's like, is this trigger actually because you're losing like a need? Are you being disrespected or are you overreacting? Because we all know there's a gray area. It could be both. You could be overreacting because it's triggering a memory of something else. But also, if it's not something that's immediate, can you go away and take a breath and reevaluate and see if maybe it wasn't that important? Because if you're someone who gets triggered, especially if you've had a lot of trauma, abuse, neglect, abandonment, your brain does set off false triggers. Anyone who's read, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I'm sure I've brought it up before, but it really tells you about how trauma physically changes the brain. Like the connections you have change. So your wiring is mixed up. So sometimes there's going to be things that like pull the fire alarm when there's not a fire. So it's taking a second to be able to identify that and then go, I don't want to, I don't need to get angry. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be sad. I need to calm down. That's when the breathing comes in. You try to the best way, according to everyone I've talked to, which includes a good friend of mine who is a therapist, Hollis Silverman, she was my big sister in my sorority. I spoke with her and her husband, Jacob, and they both are incredible therapists. He works specifically in the trauma PTSD world. And they were kind of telling me these things, and it just sort of like, ran similar to everything I'm reading. But the best thing you can do to slow down the trigger is come back to your body. And that's what I told my boyfriend, who wasn't mad that I got triggered, but he was like scared because I was in such a state of panic and he didn't know what to do, and he loves me. So he wanted me to be okay. And I think that we all have that feeling for someone where it's like, whether you're listening to this and you're someone who's trying to manage your own triggers, or someone who sometimes has these adverse reactions and you're listening to this, like, is there anything I can do to help them? The best thing you can do is come back to your body. So as someone trying to help someone who's being triggered, deep breaths. If it's okay to touch them, I think that's the thing you need to get permission on. Don't just dive in because you don't know what state they're in. But like, hey, is it okay if I, give you a hug, or do you want to hold my hands? Do you want me to put my hands on your shoulder? And reminding them to breathe. Hands on the face too, if that's your relationship and they're comfortable with it. But always in the moment ask, because you just never know really what's going on. You can assume, like if you have your own triggers, you can go, okay, yeah, I have these, but you can't know how a person's brain is reacting. None of us can. But so offering, do you want to hold my hand? Let's take a deep breath. Because that's the biggest thing. Relaxing, breathing in and releasing the tension. So just sort of trying to clear your mind of thoughts, but like, recognizing, okay, let me slow down. Let me do some box breathing is a hugely helpful thing. They do slow inhales and slow exhales, but box breathing is, inhale for at least 6 seconds and then hold it for 6 seconds. Release slowly for that amount of time. Hold it again. Inhale again, and do that as many times as it needs for you to feel calm in your body. And the thing is, it's not, in a way, breathing is a way to distract from the whatever thought is setting off the alarms. If you focus over to counting your breath, that's then what you're focusing on. So you're no longer spiraling around the thought, but also physiologically changing your breath changes the reactions in your body. So it will release things in your body. It causes your muscles to relax. Big deep breaths force your heart to slow down. They bring more oxygen to your brain, so your brain can kind of like, I don't know if it makes your brain stop racing, but like just more oxygen kind of slows everything down. Less oxygen eventually slows everything down to a halt. But, and excuse me, by the way, for the amount of times I'm saying, I'm just shifting back and forth to looking at these kind of notes I have, which isn't something, usually I'm reading questions, but I'm just speaking off my head otherwise. Breathing, trying to clear your mind of the thoughts, which that's where counting the breaths really comes in, helps you stop focusing on the why'd they say this? What's this? Oh my God, I'm so terrified. And then centering, according to Psychology Today, dropping your awareness to the center of your body, just below your navel, just really like focusing on trying to like feel your inhale, expand your stomach, exhale, lower it, and just sort of releasing if you're doing any clenching. And then focus, choose a keyword. I know this sounds really woo-woo to people who, if you're like me, grew up in an area where everyone's just like, don't be a pussy. You know what I mean? That was, for so many years, self-care to me was like, suck it up. That's what I thought self-care was for luxurious hippie pussies. And if you're like that, which you might be, because I know I wasn't the only one, it seems a little woo-woo to choose a word, that represents how you want to feel in this moment. Like calmness, relaxed, centered. But it really does. Having those, there have been studies done about how repeating something makes it real in your head. So just going, I am calm. You don't have to say it out loud. Depending on where you are, you could, but like just in your head, take a deep inhale. Think of that, I am calm. And then when you exhale, just imagine that you're exhaling all the negative emotions. Just see the negativity leave your body. That is what you're doing. You're bringing in fresh air and letting go of the old air. So releasing the air that was in your body when you were triggered. Feet on the ground is a good one for me. Like when I feel very triggered is like actually planting your feet and just, as you are, like I said before, with centering, shifting your focus to your navel, but even going down to your feet and just really being aware of that, the balls of your feet are on the ground. You're feeling all those four corner pads, just touching the ground, connecting with the earth. You're okay. Nothing is going wrong. You are safe. For me, I think that would be probably one of the words I would go to if I was breathing in a word and breathing it out, because that's what a lot of my triggers have to do with, is feeling unsafe because, I don't know, I'm a woman who grew up neglected and abandoned and et cetera, et cetera. Abuse, yay. So what sort of things can be triggers? I guess I didn't touch on I touched on a little, but like it literally could be anything. I said that. I guess I did touch on it, but like there's big ones, like the sexual assault, abuse, but then there can be little things that it takes you a while to realize even are a trigger. Like sometimes it's like such a baseline small amount of trigger that like you can be feeling anxious and just be like, I guess I'm just having anxiety. Or there's been times where I'm like, oh, I think I must have had too much coffee. And it's like, actually, I just looked at something that triggered me. Like it reminded me of somewhere else, or there was a scent. Yeah. Giving yourself grace too, to just go, it's okay to be triggered. Cause I think our society, we sort of measure ourselves against this perfectionist standard, of what success means, but also like, oh, that if you're anything besides happy, you're being crazy. It's not okay. And it is okay. And it's human. It's very human to get upset. So when you realize you're triggered, also reaffirming that is okay. Something has alarmed the emotions in your body. And honestly, it's not a bad idea to be grateful to your body once you calm down. Go like, thank you. Even though, if it's a false trigger, like even though it wasn't right, appreciate that your body's, it's the same as like when your dogs bark when someone comes to the door. It's like, sometimes you're like, don't bark at everybody, but also like they're protecting you. Like they're trying to keep you safe. And they don't always get it right. Your body's not always going to get it right, but like the fact that it shows up is good. It's much better than having no triggers. Cause like a lot of times triggers aren't false. A lot of times you get triggered and that's your intuition. And that's what's hard with trauma, is because like you want to trust your intuition, but with trauma, you really have to, if you're someone who gets triggered because of trauma, you really have to examine each trigger, which is a bummer that you're like, oh, this extra burden, but because sometimes your body might be going off about something fake, but sometimes your body might be nailing it. And so, sometimes your body goes off about a person because they're not a good person or not a good person for you. But you really have to assess and be aware of, did they do something that sets off a trigger based on something else, or is this a real situation? How can you help? That was the biggest thing for my boyfriend, and that broke my heart because I didn't know what to tell him. He just wanted to help me. He just was like, "Are you okay?" He didn't know what to do, and it's hard. And if you're with someone you love and they get like really upset, it's hard to see someone you love really upset. Here's some tips from a blog. So take it for what you will. Everydayfeminism.com, which isn't a site I normally subscribe to. I'm not anti this website. I just feel like I have to tell you that because I don't want you guys giving me more credit about like me paying attention to general culture than I do. But when in the course of Googling articles about triggering, this one seemed to be the most fitting. I liked the advice, and it kind of like reiterated things I'd said or read in other places. Excuse me, not said, only read in other places. I'm not like, this one agrees with me. That's the opposite of this podcast. This one agrees with what I already think, so I'm going with that one because I want people to know that like I'm right and everyone else is wrong. Learning what someone's triggers are, obviously, like we said, you're not always going to know, and it can come up by surprise. But if you're aware of them, then you can help them avoid them or ensure that they know or not accidentally trigger them yourself. Being a tester, this is like maybe something to do for someone you're really close with, a family member, a very close friend, a partner. But being able to be a tester. So maybe there's a big movie out. Like, and maybe if I had done my due diligence. Here's the thing. If I would have thought I was going to get at all that there was any chance I would get triggered by a Joker movie, I probably just never would have seen it. I went in this thing like, yeah, comic book movie. I've been to a ton of them. I'll be fine. I was not. But being willing to maybe like see something before someone to let them know, read a book first and let them know if there's something that's like, this actually might really upset you. Or if you just have seen it, obviously like that's very hard to like be like, oh, let's go to this movie together, but I'll go see it first and then I'm paying for 3 tickets or whatever. Or get one of those AMC movie stubs things, which I feel like I should get. Everyone's been talking about them around me. Unrelated. But letting someone know if they're, I'm thinking about seeing The Hills Have Eyes. And then you go, just so you know, I know you get triggered about sexual assault. So that might trigger you. So you should know that before you go, which no one told me about The Hills Have Eyes. And that was the last time I got triggered, which was in 2000, over 10 years ago. Look things up in advance, a thing I didn't do, but now I know to look up, movies, especially if they've been labeled as dark. I was like, yeah, dark, blah, blah, blah. But like, I guess I kind of went it naively because people are like, it's dark. And I'm like, yeah, well, my whole life has been dark, so I'm sure I can handle it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, it's like, I can't handle it because my life's been dark. What an ironic turn of events. And like I said, sometimes it's unavoidable, a lot of times, sometimes I think if you work at it, you can learn to reduce triggers to the point that like those things don't trigger you anymore because you just sort of repeated to your brain so often that it is okay. You've gotten in the habit of, because you can shift your pathways because those are what like the neural pathways are what cause reactions. That's where all the like signals are being sent to each other, and you can shift the way you think. That's the reason so many people talk about positive mantras or, like self-worth mantras, saying those in the mirror, because it takes a lot of time and repetition, because if you have bad self-worth or you have bad habits, the longer you do it, the deeper that grain, that like just that pathway gets in your brain, and the deeper it is, just the more ingrained it is. But you can create new pathways, but you just have to do it over and over. So sometimes I think you can get to the point where things that used to trigger you don't, and sometimes you can get them to trigger you a lot less. Whereas like, at some point you would have gone into a flashback full panic attack. Maybe you just now, your heart starts beating a little bit faster and you have to go like, okay, I'm okay. It's fine. It's the thing that's not actually a thing. But sometimes they're unavoidable. It happens. Here's some things you can do for a friend who has been triggered or has a tendency to get triggered. A friend, loved one, family member, whatever. Let them know they can contact you. It's a very simple gesture. Obviously, if you're with them, just being like, hey, do you have, do you need to talk? I'm here for you. But also if you know someone's prone to getting triggered, you've seen it happen, going, hey, just so you know, if this ever happens again, you can call me and I will help try to calm you down. I'm a resource. You don't have to feel embarrassed. You don't have to feel like you're bothering me, because that's a big thing. I think that's with a lot of mental health issues, though. Not I think it is. Where it's like, in addition to whatever the bad feeling is, you're then like, I'm going to be a burden, or I'm going to annoy this person, or they're going to think I'm crazy. And so having someone you say, hey, it's okay. I'm here for you. I don't think you're crazy. I understand that some things make your brain have these reactions. And, if you need to know that you have someone who can calm you down, or can at least be there for you to support you until you calm yourself down, I can be that person. And you can call me at any hour. And I mean it. What I will say that's not in this article, don't fucking offer that if you can't do that. If you're going to ignore their phone call, or like, you're like, they're fucking, what if they're triggered? I don't want to talk to them. Don't offer it. Because that's shitty. That's shitty. But other things you can do, while someone's being triggered, the physical close thing, we touched on that. Again, not to trigger you with the touching on, but, yeah, just asking permission, but then also just being there for them. Sometimes if you just sitting next to someone can help them, because they just realize they're not alone. It helps them come back to reality. I'm here with my friend. Being a shoulder to cry on, like literally. Distracting and comforting them. Let's do something else. Let's go for a walk. Let's turn on a comedy movie. Let's do a puzzle. Sex, if it's your partner, let's grab a drink. If someone is in tune with the fact that they get triggered, they may have tools and devices they already know work. Maybe, I'll just have, and that's the thing. That's a sticky round too. Because I'm like, I'll have my cup of hot chocolate. For me, I emotionally eat. So it's like, is the triggering comforting me, or am I shoveling the feeling down? It's a fine art, but that's, for each person to know for themselves. And also, okay. That's how I feel sometimes with emotions. And I'm like, yes, I'm overwhelmed. This food is bad for me. But like, if I don't shut off this emotion and I don't know, I by the way, full disclosure, I'm still trying to learn other tools. So this whole research has been very helpful to me, because I very much use food as my comfort, and it's not always healthy. And there are times when I literally go, yes, this is not a food I should be eating, but it's the food that's right here. It's convenient. And if I don't eat something, I'm going to not be able to stop this emotion, and I cannot handle it. I don't have the capacity right now to have this feeling keep continuing at this level. That's the thing I do. And that's not a healthy coping mechanism. It's, to me, not any different than reaching for a beer. It's just that one is more socially acceptable. Food in general, I mean, food relationships are so weird, because like, you definitely want to eat, but like, using food as an emotional device is an issue. But going to grab a bite, it gets you somewhere out of the house. Let's go grab a drink. Let's go. Fine. Let's have some tea, whatever. Toys, maybe cuddly toys if it's a kid. And you may not have all these at the ready, but coming up with let's just even just get out of here. You know what I mean? And also being open to, hearing what they have to say without pressuring them. So going, if you want to talk about it, we can, but, why don't we get out of here? Would you rather just kind of do something to take your mind off of it? Because for some people, it will help for them to talk. And some people, talking about it's just going to make them spiral around the trigger and make it worse. So other than that, don't be judgmental. And most importantly, if you love someone who gets triggered, don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake and accidentally trigger that person. Obviously, if you're doing something shitty or abusive or bad, or that intentionally would trigger them, you're a monster. But if, you brought them a gift and, the packaging had a photo on it that reminded them of someone who had done something bad to them, and you don't know that person and you don't know that, and it sets something off, something like that, taking to your girlfriend to see a movie and she panics, gets triggered. That's not your fault. You're not a bad person because you accidentally triggered someone. If you do, you don't need to feel bad, but just going, that wasn't my intention, and then reutilizing these steps. How can I help you? Yeah. I think that's kind of everything I wanted to say. What are my triggers? I don't know. being made to feel less than, any type of getting yelled at, anything that reminds me of any conversations around household cooking and cleaning. For some reason, I'm like triggered by kitchens. It's I try to wade myself through both of those things, but I definitely have, those are like uphill obstacles because of my own personal past incidents in kitchens, I guess. But there've been smells of food, like I said, things that remind me of like emotional imbalance or someone who might be emotionally unstable, trigger fears from my childhood, fears of my own, like what I worry about people perceiving my psyche to be, et cetera, et cetera. Some people, I asked in the Facebook group, do people have triggers? Someone said different music, driving by certain places, certain scents. Best Idiot Forever Kathy said the smell of smoke ever since she quit smoking really like sets off alarms in her body, like goes, she just really gets triggered by it. What are your triggers? Let me know. Join the Facebook group, by the way. We have a Facebook group. Just look up Ignorance is #blessed idiots. That's us. We're all idiots over there. It's a safe space for unsafe thoughts. So it's not a place to come in and just be like, this is why everyone's wrong. You're a fucking idiot. But like, did you hear something on a podcast you didn't agree with? Do you want to add to it? Do you have thoughts on an identity we haven't covered that you're like, look, I know that this isn't okay, but this thought popped in my mind. Has anyone else ever thought that? Am I a bad person for that? Because you're probably not. You just don't understand. And our minds are evolved to be curious and want answers. And the reality is, which is not ingrained into our social, weavings, our normal society. Like, and this is from someone who never stops questioning. And I don't think you should. That's the whole premise of the show. But like, there are going to be things that you never get a clear answer to because there aren't always clear answers. But having discussions, getting to hear other people's viewpoints, it helps you, see a different side, learn a little more. So come on over to the Facebook group. You don't have to be a patron or anything to join. And that's it. That's our episode on triggering. How'd you like the solo podcast? Let me know. Head over to the Facebook group or comment at me, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. What do you think? Should I do more solos? Do you hate this? Do you only want interviews? Are you triggered by this whole podcast? Are you done with me saying the word triggered? Is it now a thing that upsets you? I hope you liked it. I hope it was somehow helpful for you or for a friend. If you like the podcast, subscribe, rate, review it on iTunes. Share it with your friends because everyone's a little bit ignorant sometimes. Big thanks again to Dustin, John, Jean, Kathy, and Terry, exclusive members of the League of Extraordinary Idiots on Patreon. I genuinely couldn't do this without you guys. I love you so much. It's just cool. Like it's become a cool community where like I know the listeners. That's fucking rad. I feel like you guys are my friends even though you're miles and miles away. And it's cool getting to have these conversations with you. And even cooler that you appreciate my bullshit enough to throw a little money my way so I can keep eating my roommate's curry. Join the Patreon so I can eat my own curry. No, it's fine. Obviously. I sound crazy. Shouldn't say that. That's probably a trigger for someone. Anyway, if you want to join the League of Extraordinary Idiots, get cool free passes to shows, VIP treatments, postcards from the road, and even more content from me. It's $1, by the way, for bonus episodes. $1 a month, you get bonus episodes. You can suggest, you can ask me juicy shit that I'll say in there. I don't know if I have anything juicy, but like I feel like, what do you really want to know? I don't know what I could tell you that I haven't already said openly on a podcast, but we do cover different topics. I do deeper interviews with people. I do other interviews. Hopefully some more coming up. So head over there. Follow @Blessed Podcast on Twitter. Ignorance is Blessed on Instagram if you want to put some faces to all the voices you hear in my interviews. And please keep in mind, no guest is or claims to be a representative for every person who has a similar identity when I do those identity interviews. I am not an expert on triggering. I'm just one person sharing my own experience and ideas to get a peek at how things look from my situated position in the world. If you have additional questions, comments, want a topic or someone specific to interview, tweet them at me, @JMS Comedy, message me on Facebook fan page, or the easiest way to do it, the way to almost guarantee I'll see it, that Facebook group for now. It's not too big, so it hasn't gotten out of hand, so I still see the posts. And yeah, I love your suggestions. I will always try to my best to deliver what I can based on those. So keep sending them my way. Keep asking questions. The more we ask, the more we learn, the more we know. And the more we know, the more we can look down on others who aren't as smart as we are. And isn't that the point? Thank you for listening. And thank you for being patient with my ignorance. See you soon, idiots.